What's up, gathered friends, and welcome back to BIONICLE Autopsy, the show where we cut through Bionicle piece by piece. Bionicle's imagery had a very unique style. In my How Bionicle Saved LEGO Autopsy, I briefly went over how the Mallory culture influenced Bionicle. Now, combining Mallory influences with a technological aesthetic seems kind of strange at first, but mixing a more traditional theme with the modern aesthetic is probably what set Bionicle apart, and a technological world placed inside of a rural setting helps give credence to a larger story and a bigger mystery. Now, the Toa were advertised more as robots than biomechanical beings with actual sentience. The most we really got out of the ads from 2001 were the basic elements and names of each Toa, and you could get a few more plot details from a promo CD that involved collecting all the masks and inputting all their numbers, but none of that really helped uncover the mystery that Bionicle had formed. And an often overlooked fact, the very first Bionicle book, Bionicle Chronicles 1, Tale of the Toa, wasn't released until 2003. But wait a minute. As Bionicle fans nowadays, we know that there's a lot of story that happened in 2001 and 2002. But if the books weren't released until 2003, how did we learn about the story? That's a lot of unanswered questions for a lot of sets being dished out every year. And while the story itself was simpler back then, to say that the Bionicle lore was easy to follow would be an overstatement. So how exactly did fans become accustomed to the story? Well, in the absence of actual novels, there were a few other forms of media that helped fill in the gaps. For example, the video game Bionicle Quest of the Toa, which was released for the Game Boy on October 1st, told the story of how the Toa actually came to the island of Motunui through the gathering of the Toa Stones, as well as introduced our main character for the year, Takua, as well as the Bionicle comics, with the first issue being released in July of 2001. The comics, of course, covering more of the Toa's journey throughout Motunui up to their battle with Makuta. And while both of these forms of media helped the fanbase understand the story a bit better, neither really helped them grow accustomed to the lore itself. At least not as much as the next big release for the year. There is still a few months gap between the release of the sets and the first Bionicle comic book that was issued, and during that time a very popular story outlet was released. One that many fans to this day still deem as some of Bionicle's best. Come January 2001, Templar Studios released the Motunui Online game. Deemed Minog by fans, the Motunui Online game proved to be one of Bionicle's best forms of storytelling, allowing the player to actually explore Motunui and grow accustomed to all of its Koros and its inhabitants. Now, the Motunui Online game was a pretty revolutionary piece of memorabilia from the Bionicle lore, especially when factoring in how popular click-and-point RPGs are at the moment. The Walking Dead video game is probably the biggest example of success for this genre, and considering its very recent 2012 release, that puts Minog very far ahead of its time. In fact, Minog accomplished quite a lot considering its very early release date. While not quite a sandbox game, it's hard to really say if there was any other actual online game that offered such a large and immersive world to explore, especially when considering that most internet users at the time were still using dial-up when this game was released. It's kind of impressive that the game actually allowed you to explore it all. Granted, it did lock several locations due to its episodic nature, the feat is still pretty impressive nonetheless. And considering it was the only offering of story content for the first 6 months of Bionicle's release, the game managed to really do a lot. And this isn't even factoring in the fact that the experience was all completely free. It definitely goes without saying that Minog was a pretty big contributor to Bionicle's success. And the game really helped define the feel and tone of 2001, while also introducing several of the characters that would be released as sets that year. But Minog's contribution didn't stop just in 2001. Templar Studios also developed the Balrog animations that were released in 2002 and followed the Balrog saga, and retained the style that was used for Minog itself. And while not exactly an interactive video game, the animations did serve as a direct sequel to the game and helped introduce a story for 2002. Just like how Minog introduced the story for 2001. And come 2003, Minog's contribution to Bionicle still continued with the release of Minog 2, The Final Chronicle. And this game would lead us into the very first Bionicle movie, as well as the release of the novels Bionicle Chronicles by C.A. Hapka. Bionicle has been delivered to us in various forms of media, be it video games, comic books, movies, or books. There's been a lot of content for the fans to get a hold of, and it was these other forms of media that no doubt helped Bionicle rise to success. But it does kind of beg the question, what would have happened if Bionicle had tapped into other forms of media? While the line had been given several direct-to-DVD movies, what would have happened had we gotten a full theatrical film? What about a TV show? LEGO has been doing a lot of TV shows recently for their lines. Well, it's kind of funny because Bionicle was actually pretty close to having its own TV show. Bionicle was forged through a very unique building style that LEGO had introduced at the time, known as Technic. It was an attempt by LEGO to sort of branch away from its traditional brick locking system, and try to do something new to captivate audiences. But the Technic building system wasn't the only building system LEGO had developed at the time. While the traditional building system utilized bricks and studs, and the Technic system utilized pins and axles, LEGO had also developed a completely different system that utilized ricketing balls and sockets. The idea behind this theme would be that kids could combine chunks of plastic of various shapes and sizes, utilizing a ricketing ball system that could be both posable and strong enough to support its own weight, which could lead to an experience closer to an actual action figure that was both more posable and stronger than the ball and socket system that Bionicle utilized. Now, this system is probably most recognizably used in the Knights Kingdom line, but at the time of its foundation it was nicknamed LEGO Beings. And with the success of both Bionicle and Star Wars, LEGO was ready to go all out with their next theme. And it was around this time that LEGO had began thinking of branching out into the TV scene. And since Bionicle had been doing so well on its own, LEGO decided to use this opportunity to promote their new line. Utilizing a TV show and the brand new LEGO Beings building system, LEGO introduced Galador. And subsequently, about a year later, said goodbye to Galador. Indeed, Galador flopped tremendously, with sales showing horrific numbers, causing the line to be deemed one of the worst-selling themes that LEGO had ever produced. And the TV show, despite having 2 seasons, didn't really do much better. LEGO played a pretty big gamble on Galador, and despite laying all their cards out on the table, didn't really win big. Quite the opposite, in fact. And it makes you kind of wonder what went wrong. Well, for starters, the TV show performed very, very poorly. And since that was the theme's main source of advertisement, there wasn't really a lot of interest in the line in its entirety. Not to mention that the line probably deviated a bit too much from its brand name. LEGO is known for using very high-quality plastic, so long as it doesn't come in a shade of lime green. And because of this, LEGO sets tend to be very, very pricey. But with Galador, the LEGO logo was placed very inconspicuously. Sometimes it wasn't even shown at all, and the TV show was hardly ever advertised as a LEGO product. This means that the sets are still sold with the same high LEGO price, but without the name brand recognition. But LEGO's most critical oversight with Galador was its competition. They released the line in parallel with an already successful and popular science fiction themed buildable action figure line. Hint hint, Bionicle. But despite Galador's critical failure, one has to wonder what would have happened had Bionicle been given the TV show rather than Galador. It would be safe to say that since all the characters of Bionicle are biomechanical beings, that the show probably wouldn't have taken the live-action liberties that it did with Galador. More than likely, had there been a Bionicle TV show, it probably would have been more akin to the more recent CGI LEGO TV shows for Ninjago and Hero Factory. But there's also a possibility that LEGO would have taken a more cartoonish approach, closer to the imagery of Minnog, or perhaps developed a completely new style. Maybe something closer to Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's also kind of interesting to think about how the story would actually be portrayed. Assuming that a Bionicle TV show would have multiple seasons with a full cast of voice actors, then perhaps a TV show might have been the best option to deliver the story that LEGO had crafted. But would it have been as immersive as Minnog? While the Balrog animations were fascinating ways to tell us a story, would they have been as interesting had we not previously explored the same location in our own free time in Minnog? Though while a TV show might not have been as immersive as Minnog was, assuming that Bionicle's popularity would have granted the show several seasons, then a lot more time could have been invested into developing the story and delivering it to us as an audience. And as mentioned prior, a lot of home computer systems used dial-up at the time, so a TV show might have been more accessible to an audience over an online game. So with that in mind, would a TV show have been the better route to go? It's hard to really say, but it is fascinating to think about. There's a lot of different directions LEGO could have taken Bionicle as far as marketing goes. We could have had a full-fledged Bionicle theatrical film, a la Transformers, though hopefully not directed by Michael Bay, or even a large-scale open-world Bionicle RPG. And while it might be too late to ever really see any of those things, it's still nice to think about what we did get. And Minnog was an exceptional opening into a brand new and fascinating world. And while it might not quite be the same as LEGO producing it, the Bionicle fanbase is filled with so many creative people, willing to give up their free time to produce something truly spectacular. And while we might not see a full-fledged Bionicle TV show or an open-world RPG, it's nice to say that we have fans willing to make their own animations and make their own mods, and help give us the next best thing. It really is the community that keeps the line going, and I'm happy to say that I'm a part of it. But for now, I will bid you adieu. Thanks for joining me in another exciting legend of the Bionicle. I'm Varderan, and this has been BIONICLE Autopsy. Thanks for watching.